Yeah, the Kershaw reading is there to direct students reading in a different direction, to challenge them. But great question. I'm glad you asked. Why read that? It is dense. It's like chewing on the hard gristle. It's not an easy read. So for students, I'd advise, don't feel like you need to read it start to finish. You want to go in there, get what you need out of it, and get out. And I'll just outline briefly the main concepts that we really want you to gather from that article. Some really accurate terminology for communication and a main concept that you want to find. So what's an ideological transaction? That's what we're trying to have with people, with communities. And Kershaw talks about communities of location and communities of interest. And if you look at that in a micro and macro way, we're interacting with target audiences, relationships, small groups, large groups, communities, society, global communities every day. So Kershaw really gives us some simple frameworks to look at those different sections. So communities of location, we want to understand. Communities of interest, we want to understand. Ideological transaction. In interacting with other people, we have an idea, we have a value system that makes up our worldview, and we want to have a transaction with others to co-create meaning. And Kershaw gives some very clear definitions and terminology that can help us understand that. And then, of course, we want to affect change in small and big ways in the world. We want to persuade people. We want to convince them. We want to collaborate with them. And the concept you want to find in the article is called performance efficacy. What effect does our presentation, does our performance, does our communication have? Does it change someone's thinking in a small way? Does it affect a community? Does it affect society? Is it a huge political change that's going to take place from our communication? So when students are watching these TED Talks and forming a critique, these are some really key concepts and terminology they can use in constructing their argument and saying, well, this is the community of interest around this talk, or this is the performance efficacy that this talk has had. Like some of the talks suggested to read are the top TED Talks in the world. So these are, being viewed by millions of people. So I really encourage you guys to get in there and scan, read it, find the key ideas, and then get out.
That's great, Dan. And what about rapport and change?
Absolutely. The main concept I think that we all work with and can really use from this article is if we're trying to affect change in a community, we have to approach it first by sort of saying, hey, I'm one of you. This is familiar. We create rapport. Everything's okay. And once we can then stand beside people and go, oh yeah, you're one of me. You're the same. I feel comfortable here. Then we can start to introduce disruption or challenge or, in small and large ways. If we start too early with an oppositional view and something that challenges someone's worldview too strongly, walls go up. Barriers go up immediately and we stop the transaction. So the skilled communicator knows, using eye contact and smiles and body language and all the tools we have available to ourselves, we get to know each other and we make rapport first. And then we say, well, now that we're closer, have you thought of it this way? And that's where we can affect change.
That's fantastic because, in journalism, we talk about building rapport at the beginning of the interview, perhaps before you start or as you start the interview. Mm-hmm. So there you go. And of course, an interview is communication. It's just a particular type of communication.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting connection for me. This week on campus in Bathurst, you gave a lecture and you talked about body language. Could you tell us just a sort of a snapshot of the key points of that?
Yeah, fantastic. This is an area I'm really passionate about. I really believe skilled communicators need to work to develop to free their body language. In the beginning, it's very conscious and you're thinking about trying to move and be congruent with what you're saying. So what does that mean? That's one of the main concepts from the P's and P's article. Does what we're saying match up with how we're moving? Yeah, and we know approximately 60% of the impact of a message is nonverbal. So that's really important. And we can tell if people are lying. If someone says to you, I love you too. Maybe you need to consider the relationship a little bit more closely. So there's great power in understanding how to read body language. And the two main approaches that we need to consider and look for when you're critiquing the TED Talks is, how does body language affect you, the presenter? You know, by standing up tall and making yourself large and being open, having open palms and having confident movement and relaxed a way of being in front of others, that affects your psychology. Yeah, Amy Cuddy calls it power posing. There's a bit of controversy around her, her research at the moment, but it's really good stuff, and I've used it for many years. And from a practice-based perspective, it changes people. Yeah, if you make yourself small and don't move much, your feeling of power and confidence decreases. So body language, how it affects you, the presenter, and then the other side, how does your body language communicate things to other people? And we need to become conscious of when we're fixing our clothes and fixing our hair and looking down and closing our eyes, and all the little things we do communicate in micro and macro ways a lot of information. And so if we're trying to create rapport and persuade and do all the things we do as skilled communicators, we need to become aware of and subtly manipulate in an authentic way our body language, because 60% of what I'm saying right now is nonverbal. So this is facial expressions, full body movements, proximity, lots of different dimensions.
That's great. Okay.